visions collide. Welcome to Glam Chemist.
Welcome back to the Glam Chemist. Today we'll be chatting with Jen Novakovich of the EcoWell. We will be discussing science communication and the growth that it's had in this industry, and the importance of dissecting and finding misinformation and disinformation as a scientist. Hi, Jen. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you being part of the podcast. Do you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
So I'm Jen. I do science communication. This is where I built my career. I have a SciComm platform through my own business, the EcoWell, and I'm also very active with other projects. I'm a co-founder for a beauty SciComm advocacy project called Beauty SciComm. I'm also very active with helping other companies think about SciComm, especially the Independent Beauty Association. I work a lot with them because I think the work that they're doing is very important for SciComm advocacy. It's more like a big picture. Let's try to get the legislators to understand this stuff, kind of work that I do with them. But I'm very active with SciComm. I started my career doing technical consulting, but I quite quickly have shifted to science communication. It's something I enjoy a bit more. I find the technical consulting, I'm still actually doing it, but I find it a little bit more stressful, a little bit less enjoyable for me and my skills and passions. And I am also a student. I went back to school recently to do a PhD, and I am studying the impact of misinformation on environmental outcomes through the lens of cosmetics. So that's an area that I've just been specifically interested in recently because I feel like there's a bit of a gap and a bit of a disconnect from what I've been observing in the market.
That is a lot of work to be doing in this very season with SciComm, your advocacy, and then your studies. For listeners who don't know about it yet, can you explain what the EcoWell is?
Ultimately, it's a knowledge sharing platform. So I do that in a number of capacities. So conferences are a big thing that I'm very passionate about because of, I think that there's a lot of barriers for industry conferences that are of high quality. So from my experience as a younger professional, I decided, and especially I find it frustrating to observe the curation of the speakers where I think maybe we could be doing a better job. So my conferences are my effort to do that for the industry, and they're entirely free to attend. That way, whoever you are, they're also virtual. So, and wherever you are located, there's nothing, or at least the barrier for entry is much lower. Obviously, there's going to be something in the way, but all my conferences also have a replay, so it just kind of lowers the barriers a bit more. I also have a podcast. I've had a podcast since 2016 where I've interviewed interdisciplinary subject matter experts about all things even remotely related to cosmetic science, giving platforms to the relevant subject matter experts who often don't have a platform and who are often kept behind the doors. And like a kind of a systemic issue in the cosmetics industry is that the technical people or regulatory people are just like told to shut up.
It is interesting how we gatekeep. We can learn about it and then gather information together and provide innovation together just by sharing the information.
I just wanted to say, like, some of the stuff that's happening with like eco design. I mean, there are companies with the Eco Beauty Score Consortium. Is that their group name? I mean, something like that. Google that, you'll find who I'm talking about. It's a consortium of relevant experts who are trying to do something to lower the barriers to think about eco design. But historically, this has not been the case, and it's like super, super important, interesting information that requires such a level of technical expertise that's just like out of reach for so many smaller to medium-sized companies in the cosmetics industry. It's nice to see people are working on that, but yeah.
And those are the types of folks that you gain access to and then you share with your platform?
This is what I try, yes.
That's awesome. What was the origin of your platforms when you decided to pivot into SciComm?
I think I had always been thinking about science communication in different ways. When I was still in undergrad, one of my professors told me that I should start a blog to just do science writing. That's actually how I started out. So I was doing science writing for a little while I was in undergrad. And then I wanted to rock climb full time. So the thing that enabled me to do that for a while was doing science writing independently so I can just work from my computer. Actually, my most of my career, science communication is something that I'm very passionate about, but I would say a lot of it has been like a convenient falling into place because it fit really well with the thing that I really, really wanted to do, which is I really wanted to rock climb. I did science writing for a while. Actually, like I would say when I started my business, I was already thinking about science communication. I've been always kind of doing it, but I found cosmetic science through a science communicator, Perry Romanowski. This is going to be telling for how old I am. He had a podcast called Chemist Corner, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I didn't realize that cosmetic chemistry was a thing. So I did my undergrad. I did zoology and then I doubled up with nutrition and nutraceutical sciences. So I was in the weeds of like kind of nutraceutical sciences, which is a little bit more established in Canada, and that's why we have this program. It's actually a flagship program at my university, and cosmetics kind of fit within the umbrella or under the umbrella of nutraceuticals in Canada. So I was already kind of thinking about it, and I had kind of a relevant enough background to explore this area, but I didn't really know about it. So Perry showed me about cosmetic chemistry. And so then I went back to school to do a diploma in cosmetic chemistry. And so then from there, I started right away. I really wanted to learn, and there's not that many opportunities in Canada, at least at the time that I was learning about all of this. Now there's so many online programs from especially universities for master's programs. Man, if I just was 10 years younger, there's so many opportunities to young students
Yeah.
today. But because I didn't have those opportunities, and because we only have one program, cosmetic science focused in Canada, I think even still today. At that time, that was certainly the case. And it was just a certificate. And that's not what I was interested in either. It was also in Toronto and I didn't want to live there. So, anyhow, I I chose to use a podcast as a platform for me to learn, where I started to reach out to people from around the world and just ask them a whole bunch of questions and report it and share. I thought it was a really interesting way to, yeah, learn and share. So, yeah, I did technical consulting shortly after that. And I did that mostly out of convenience too. I didn't end up working with like a traditional path for a cosmetic chemist would probably be like working at a contract manufacturer to gain experience. However, at the time, all the contract manufacturers in my area were around Toronto in a city that I didn't want to travel to. I didn't want to live in the city, and I had always had ambition to live in uh, on the Bruce Peninsula in Ontario is a really hot rock climbing spot. So it comes back to rock climbing. So that wasn't going to happen if I lived in Toronto. So yeah, I did my own thing, kind of set up my own home lab for a while. And so then I'm like, oh, maybe I could build a lab space, a larger lab space in on the Bruce Peninsula when we hopefully one day buy a house because houses are very expensive. Things kind of fell into place. Then I started to do more SciComm, step away from formula work and do more of like the technical oversight work. Oh my gosh. Now we're just on this big journey of my whole career, so we don't even have to go there. Things just eventually fell into place where I found a
Oh.
space to do science communication and focus on it more and more. As I was doing it more, I just got more opportunities so that I used to have to do more formula work and more technical consulting work. And I started about 10 years ago, and gradually, as I was doing more science communication, the opportunities to do more science communication, including in a consulting role, has just expanded. And so now,
It,
eventually, I got to where I am right now, where I'm
yeah.
mostly focused on science communication.
It sounds like you created that path for yourself because I don't know, aside from Perry Romanovsky, I didn't know of many platforms that were specific to cosmetic science other than yours. Obviously, we're around the same age, so I was able to see it as you were creating it. But you're absolutely right. In the time where we were kind of seeking our education, there weren't as many resources available. And I found out about cosmetic science, or I found out the resources available for cosmetic science through Perry Romanovsky as well. I've had him on the podcast before. He was very gracious and very kind to like say yes to little old me in a tiny little podcast. But he's always been so involved in kind of advocating for young folks to get involved in cosmetic science, which is a lot of what now allows people to go into those avenues and get those resources to all those universities that now have those platforms, have those positions available. You have a very full career. You've taught, you've written, you've consulted, you've done science communication. What have you learned from that path in that time that you've created these opportunities for yourself?
Many things. One would be, I think that there is a huge value to people thinking about entrepreneurship to eventually create something that they feel fulfilled with. You have to be very gritty because you're not going to make money for a long time. And things are hard. You have to deal with people who, I mean, as a small business owner, I mean, people like with like paying like chasing down invoices is kind of a frustrating thing that would frustrate or stress a lot of people out. But to me, it was all worth it because the fact that I started my own business, and I started my own business in my 20s, um, it's just given me so many opportunities. I wouldn't be able to live actually where I currently live, which is a remote community that just so happens to have rock climbing. Um, there would not be these opportunities for me if I didn't do my own thing. So I would encourage people, especially if you don't want to live in a city, like
Hmm.
that was just me. If you have other goals for yourself, and I mean, just think about it. I think hard about it though, because most businesses do fail. It is very hard.
Yeah.
You have to be very gritty. I was really lucky that, well, when I started my business, I was living with my now husband, who was kind of my umbrella for, or sorry, kind of my incubator for a little while. So I didn't have to worry as much about paying bills. And I was really young. And also, I just so happened to have just recently left a stint of living behind there's
Hmm.
a rock climbers only campground behind a pizzeria, and it was much smaller back when I lived there in Kentucky. I lived there. I just came off of a stint of almost a year of living in a tent for rock climbing, so like my standards were low for a little while, so I was okay with not making that much money for quite a while. um, but yeah, you can invest in yourself through a business and create something that you just wouldn't ever have otherwise been able to do, um, in whatever direction you want either. You in addition, sorry, that didn't really in whatever direction you want in addition to that. So I will also say through my career, which has been mostly independent, I've been able to pivot based off of what I've been interested in. So I started doing formula work, and then I started to like it less because I found it straining. And I started to do more technical oversight work because I found it more interesting for a while. I still find it very interesting, but then because I started to do more of it and started to be more passionate about science communication, I've just been able to carve that path based off of what I'm interested in. And I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do that if I didn't do entrepreneurship, if I wasn't an entrepreneur. So that would be one thing. My second thing would be like lean into what you're passionate about. And this might seem like lame advice from, I know a lot of people who feel that like you should just do work to make money and it's not about passion, and this is what's wrong with younger generations because they want to ultimately I've heard these things from especially older people, that the
No, I
problem
think
is
you're
now
absolutely right.
people want to find a career that they find fulfillment with. Like, honestly, the reality
Like, God
for
forbid.
yeah, but honestly, the reality for a lot of young people, I'm just going to say this frankly, is probably we're going to be working until we die. I mean,
Yeah,
look at the cost
quite
of living.
literally.
Like,
Yeah.
so if I'm going to be working until then, I want to be doing something that I enjoy, right?
Yeah.
And also I want to like I just want to create something. I want to do something good. And so having a passion behind the work that I've done has been, I think, the reason why I've been able to be successful and the reason why I've been able to persevere, because otherwise it would be really easy to just give up if there was no passion behind the work that you're doing. And I was really lucky when I started my business to have a mentor. Actually, my uncle, who is the previous CFO of PepsiCo and does business, like entrepreneurship consulting. And so he helped me think about my business when I first got started. And that was one of the big messages he had for me. And if I could convey that to younger people who are thinking about entrepreneurship, like lean into your passions. And also another recommendation that he had for me, and I would recommend this for anyone else, is like really think about what your strengths are as you're leaning into your passions and trying to build a career. It doesn't have to be entrepreneurship, but something that I learned early on, and you can see this how I built my platform, is I'm really good at creating networks. Yeah, I really enjoy it. I like curating things. I like sussing things out to create
Yeah.
networks that can like do something. And that is my business that I've built. And that is what I found out early on that I was just good at. And so I wouldn't say that I'm like, there's so much knowledge shared on my platform. It's not from me, it's from all these brilliant people that I'm able to work with.
I'm learning that my passion is communication, and my passion is the way I communicate with others and how I speak and how I gather people. Um, and I didn't think of it as a strength prior to now because you know, because of what the expectations are of the industry, you're supposed to, kind of check all the boxes and then it's okay. You have to like check all the boxes and then like get to the end and then get a degree and then work at the same company forever so that you can get to the highest level. And it's like that seems very antiquated now, considering how movement up the ladder is very difficult for scientists.
Even
Yeah.
if you move up that ladder, like we're seeing mass layoffs right now with some of the big companies because of the state of the economy, but with like very senior scientists who've invested their whole careers in these companies. And the reality is, like, you may feel you mean a lot to a company, but at the end of the day, they are companies. You mean a lot
Yeah.
to yourself. So figure out a way to make a career where you're investing in yourself and like you have flexibility. And I don't know, it just, I know a lot of people have recently experienced this in the cosmetics industry because of a lot of the layoffs that have recently happened with some of the big cosmetic companies. So yeah, I just
Yeah.
wanted to say that.
No, it's okay. No, I think it's something important to say. It's a testament to the times too. There's a lot happening in our spaces, not just because of financial strains that are happening to companies, but also just respecting or legitimizing the resources we provide. So if you don't think of it as important, it seems like a frivolous expense and then it gets tossed. And remembering that a corporation is still a corporation and you're just, a piece of the machine. And if you don't feel functional to them anymore, then yeah, you're not likely worthy of remaining with the company or being an expense that they're willing to take on. We all kind of learned that the hard way, but unfortunately for folks right now, it's all happening so quickly and so often that it is really difficult to watch our friends and family go through that right now and sit on the other side and be like, well, what can I do to save myself from that hardship? And sometimes it means finding resources and, like you said, leaning into something you're passionate about. and seeing kind of how it goes. I think the risk is worth the reward with this right now, given how uncertain things can be. Even just finding a job, like right now, I'm in my transition of leaving the cosmetic sciences and I'm applying to different places. It's not an easy process, like mostly because I don't have experience in anything other than cosmetic science. But even just the fact that there's mass layoffs happening, the fact that there's limited resources for folks, everyone's vying for the same opportunities right now, and it's really, really difficult to get a job. It's really, really difficult to keep a job, and it's really, really difficult to get a job. So it's a very interesting time, and I'm glad you brought it up because I'm sure there are listeners out there that are like either recently, laid off or seeing it coming down the pipeline and knowing that like you're not alone in it. We all kind of empathize with you. We understand what's happening, and if you can take our words into any advice, it would be, find something that you can enjoy doing for long term. And if you can make it lucrative, then God bless, you know?
It's also
Um,
a good idea, I think. One of my colleagues, mentors, he suggested this. He works in a different science space than me, but it's applicable to anyone really. In light of the mass layoffs that we are currently seeing, is like have like a back pocket side gig. And he also thinks the entrepreneurship thing is a good idea. And like while you're in a company, it could just be like whatever, just like think about it a little bit, whatever. But it's just kind of a backup in case something ever happens, then you have something else there that maybe you can build up. Or say you're looking for jobs, just like it's a great way to build experience too, but just like do something. And that could be something. And then it could eventually be, even if you are at a company, it could eventually be something that could be something that you fall back on. Worst case scenario.
yeah, that's really sound advice. I want to pivot a little bit back to networking. A lot of your networking happened online. What advice would you give young folks that are now looking to network who may not have access to the trade shows and such? How are you able to create your online network?
So it's been fairly easy for me with the fact that I host podcasts and I have conferences. So I just, and especially as I've built it up, now my platform is recognized and people respond quite quickly when I reach out to them. Usually, not always, but the response rate has been better as I've been having. Like the other thing is, people always, when you say I want to host you on something, people always click through and see what platform am I. I know I do it. Like if somebody is like suspicious, I'm not going to collaborate with them. That's just. I
Yeah, of
mean, I know a
course.
lot of other people who have that same approach. So just reach out to people. Um, if you have a podcast, it makes it easy because people like to talk about whatever, share their expertise.
Hmm.
People like to connect in this kind of capacity. So it's an easy way to connect, but not everyone has to have a podcast. There's a lot of podcasts right now. So like it's okay if
Yeah,
you don't
there's
have
a
a
lot of platforms right now.
podcast.
Yeah. I
But
mean, how did you do it in the early days? Like, were
so I just send
you
people
just
messages.
okay?
I just connected with them on LinkedIn and then sent them a message to say something along the lines of like, seen you do this work. I'm very interested in this perspective. Would you be willing to share that perspective? Something like that. It helps when you reach
Hmm.
out to people if you actually know a little bit about them. I will say a lot of people will reach out to me with like sometimes I think it's written by ChatGPT, the messages that they send. That's like, that's not what I do. You don't know what you what. So
Like,
like
do you engage with my content at all?
yeah, they'll talk about like all these like non-toxic stuff that they're so excited about. It's like, do you follow me? Like, do you
Yeah.
actually read my content if you're sending me these messages? So like, I'll just, if somebody sends me those messages, I delete and I do not respond
Yeah.
because like it's like slightly insulting to so make sure
It
you look
is. You
at
should
what
know
they do
something.
and know
Yeah.
something about the people that you're reaching out to. So that would be a recommendation, but then just like genuinely want to connect with them and learn from them. People in the cosmetics industry, with few exceptions, but like overwhelming majority of the cosmetics industry, in my experience, has been so open And I don't think that this is just the cosmetic science industry. I think this is most people in general, but certainly in sciences, it's something that I've definitely observed. If you, especially if you care about like the stuff that they care about, for me and a lot of the people that I reach out to, people care about like truthfulness and science and stuff. So I share that value, and it makes it really easy to connect. So yeah, reach out to people, reach out to them and ask
Just
them
boldly do it.
questions. And yeah, I mean, I still do that all the time. Sometimes I don't even put a message these days, and I just can, if I find people interesting on LinkedIn, like I just add them as a connection. And like people do that to me all the time. Usually I just like look to make sure that they're not like an AI bot, and make sure that they're like the worst thing is I I feel bad every time this happens. I accept, and then they immediately send me like a sales pitch for some whatever they have to sell
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. It's like, "Ay, you got
You
me."
got
But
me.
otherwise
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Every time. Yeah, that's always the shocking one. Um, LinkedIn is a great place for networking in that way. I started on LinkedIn when I was like in my undergrad. I wasn't as active. I think there's a lot more on the platform now than ever to get involved and be a little bit more creative and show your creative side and even use it as like a blog style. In the past, it was just like exactly that, a networking platform. But now it seems like a true social platform where you can highlight all of the things you're working on and engage with people within those industries very easily, which is different from like the other platforms where you're just kind of doing it as commentary and entertainment. So if you are looking to, pursue something in in your career, I'd say get comfortable with posting on LinkedIn. It's okay to, kind of post your journey because some folks will really resonate with that story, especially now given everything that's happening. If you have information and a resource that we're not seeing enough of in these other social media platforms, LinkedIn might have like the good informative things that you need.
Something that I've been seeing a lot lately
Oh
is
my
like
gosh.
the use of ChatGPT to write all the content, even for people who have
Really?
PhDs. It's like rampant. It's all over my
Like,
feed.
do we not
And
know
I
how
think
to write sentences anymore? Like, what
and
happened?
I think people might not think that it's that obvious. I guess like
Yeah.
it may not be as obvious to everyone, but I'm a person that spends a lot of time online. And so it's
Yeah.
obvious to me, and it's like, "Oh my God." I have it might be showing up on my feed more because I like certain accounts that I'm like suspicious aren't even real people that are like highly engaged within certain communities. So this is something that I do. I find interesting, and it's actually
Yeah.
I think why I'm also successful with my I I like to like look into things, like suss people
Yeah.
out, and that includes their behavior when they're like liking or engaging or posting. So
Yeah.
I guess I do look
It's
at
even
these
like pattern
things.
recognition. Yeah. Because
So
it
then I
uses the
slow
same
down on
style.
these things that are like clearly ChatGPT, and like I don't know if it's because I'm doing that I'm seeing more of it, but it's just like all over my
I
LinkedIn.
think it's everywhere. I think like I can honestly say that as a one woman show right now, AI is something that I've been using to my advantage. But I think it's the way you're supposed to use it as a resource and not necessarily as just like a catch all
Ask
kind of thing to do your work.
ChatGPT to write the thing for you with no
Yeah, there has to be a person behind the description of the app and the copy on the page. What happened to writing copy? Where did everybody go? Like that used to be something we enjoyed doing was being creative and writing little catchy copy. And I don't know, it's weird that no one really writes a single sentence anymore. We just ask chat now. I would love to talk a little bit about your PhD topic because I
Mhm.
think it's something that everyone needs to understand moving forward. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came up with the concept and what you're doing to, defend it?
Misinformation just in general is a problem. Um, Misinformation about environmental performance is just something that I've just seen a lot. But it's the same kind of thing. It's I mean, it's also interesting in other spaces that aren't environmental performance related. I just think more people are talking about it and less people are talking about the specifics of environmental performance. And I think it's like really poorly understood in the cosmetics industry. And I think that's why it was frustrating me so much. I kept going to conferences where these people who did not have the right background were giving like technical presentations, speaking to industry about things that they were just getting completely wrong. And then there's so many claims that are just like everywhere on conference floors that then is teaching the industry. You see this trickle down effect. Sorry, should I start with scientists? Scientists publish these like sensational papers that aren't quite aligned with reality because they didn't have the right interdisciplinary support for their research. Like environmental performance is super interdisciplinary. And so it's really easy to get things wrong if you don't collaborate with the right disciplines to ensure that you actually understand what you're publishing. So like bad science is a big problem in every space, including in environmental related topics. So then you've got technical suppliers, ingredient suppliers teaching other people in the industry about these claims. Then you've got the contract manufacturers and different service suppliers teaching the brands the claims, and the brands are talking to consumers, and around we go. Who came first? I don't know. Like whether or not it was like consumer misperceptions that were driving it in the opposite direction. Who knows? But there is a lot of misinformation about environmental performance, and so yeah, that was troubling to me. And I started to, in my master's, this is a topic that I started to get interested in. I was looking at sunscreen specifically in my master's, and then alongside, I also did a graduate certificate that required me to do practicum, which I did actually with the Independent Beauty Association. I really enjoy them, and Dr. Kemi Oka was my advisor through this. But sunscreen is a unique example to highlight some of these issues. So I said that there's a lot of misinformation coming from science. So this includes with respect to sunscreen, with respect to like the perceptions around coral bleaching. That's actually coming from like sensationalized science. That's actually an outlier of the body of evidence. It's a really complex space with some things that are conveniently absent from the literature, like the environmental impacts of beginning of life associated with things like zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. It's created this public perception through this science sensationalism pipeline of the research, where this guy with sensationalized topic got disproportionate media play, and he also was advocating to legislators to ban certain filters based off of his research. And so this is a really big issue, is legislators aren't actually technical experts. So when they're presented this stuff in a really compelling way, like everyone else, they'll believe it. And this is what we've seen in Hawaii, who then decided to ban certain filters. And so this is something that I explored in my master's, to look at like the disconnect specifically there with public perception and sunscreen environmental impact. Alongside, I also did a practicum to look at environmental policy from a state level that was happening, and to evaluate how sound scientifically it was. How scientifically sound it was, which a lot of the policy, a lot of the legislation that was being drafted was not scientifically sound. And so I started to see in my master's how much of a role misinformation has for legislative and regulatory decision making. That's really weedy.
Wow.
But
No,
yeah,
I
so
think
this is why I'm so passionate
yeah.
about the work that I do with IBA now. I help them with their science communication efforts to help teach legislators, because the thing that I kept seeing is that like just people didn't know. Yeah, so fairly quickly after I finished my master's, I applied to a PhD with this all in mind. Like,
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. I'm talking in not a very cohesive way. Another thing that I
No, it's
learned in my
okay.
master's was I learned about this topic called misplaced conservation. And it's a research topic specific to conservation, but I think it's applicable and in my PhD, I'm trying to argue this. I think it's applicable to like corporate sustainability efforts where misinformation and polarization, like such as what we've seen with sunscreen, will lead to worsen conservation, either indirectly or directly worsen conservation outcomes. Because when you do the wrong thing, then it might detract from meaningful policy. Conservation spend is limited. And so when you lower the resources available to people to do those types of efforts, then like it just ultimately makes the whatever you're trying to do harder. There's also some research around this concept of like green nudges, where like the order of policy really matters, because people get tired when they feel that they've done something. So there was a really interesting study about this early, I think it was 2019, and this was around when I was doing my master's. It was in the context of carbon tax, but it looked at like if you introduce the effective policy first versus if you introduce it after a green nudge. And so a green nudge is just like a little push in potentially the right direction, who knows, to make a change. But the other thing that's more substantial, like a carbon tax or carbon tax, whatever it looks like, the more substantial environmental policy, it's more arduous, it's more expensive. So if that comes first, people are more likely to be receptive to it. If it comes after the green nudge, people feel that they've done something already. And so they're less likely to be receptive to that more substantial policy.
That's
So this
so
was a part of
interesting.
what I was looking at in my master's. And so the thing that made this better for success for the more substantial policy, it was if there was effective communication to the people who are voting for some of these things on, well, the green nudge is actually not going to do that much. We actually need the more substantial policy. But when that's not communicated and when people feel that they're doing the right thing, then it makes it harder to actually address the actual the
Yeah.
things that are driving the actual problems. So there's these two streams of research that I found really interesting in my master's. And so yeah, I think misinformation is causing worsened environmental performance. I don't think it's always intentional too. I see a lot of people get
Mm-hmm.
all hung up on intention. This was highlighted in the study on misplaced conservation. Intention doesn't matter, it's outcomes. So there's a lot of well-intentioned sustainability efforts I see happening in cosmetics, but when it's driven by assumptions rather than legitimate measurement, which
Yeah.
I saw a lot of in the cosmetics industry, then we misguide people. And then again, they feel that they've done something, and then it makes the end outcome harder to achieve, the end outcome that we
Yeah.
purportedly want to achieve. And like just
Like
some quick
undoing.
examples. Yeah, some quick examples that are just like rampant in the cosmetics industry is like we're like telling people that solid products equals better, and we actually have fairly good evidence that they don't generally. There's been
Yeah.
LCAs on this, and like oftentimes these products actually have worsened environmental performance. And so like just one example, and then like consumers start to see this, they invest in it, and then it makes it harder to then have conversations that now confront their opinions that actually this is
Mm-hmm.
wrong. This is a messy space. To do the right thing, we have to invest in understanding the topic. And that is, I think, a really big challenge. People want to act fast. People want to act fast on these things, but sometimes it takes a while to understand the topic. And it's better if we have a place of understanding before we start to take steps rather than confusing everyone. Like a lot of these topics, it's just like environmental issues are so systemic and they require collaboration to push us in the right direction. But for us to collaborate, we have to, and this comes back to like my passion for science communication. and the platform I build, we have to have the right information. And like, we have to be flexible because knowledge changes. So there's this concept called adaptive management that's really, important with any type of environmental management literature. It's like adaptation is very important because things change and we have to take that into account, especially as we're like measuring this stuff, which you have to, and you have to continuously do better. And so to do that, you have to continuously adapt. But yeah, people want to act fast. And also, we just don't do very well with complex information. Like environmental performance of products, let alone companies, let alone sectors, let alone society, is really, really complicated. And it's hard for even people who are like researching this space to wrap their head around all the complexities, because it's just like a giant web of impact from so many different facets. So simplicity is something that we have a bias for, and that often shapes our decision making. And often we make assumptions based off of the simplicity, and then it often pushes us to misinformation.
That is the most concise way to even explain it, because I
Oh my
think,
gosh, that wasn't very
and
concise. I'm sorry.
no, that last sentence is really, it's really powerful, only because we can even relate it back to the ChatGPT reference. Like, the easier solution has become the norm, as opposed to doing the research, writing the blog post, getting in the weeds of things the way that you like to do it. I don't know. I think it just kind of came full circle for me with everything you've been discussing. And I think this information is really helpful. What advice would you give to scientists and formulators to kind of avoid those pitfalls or that misinformation?
Michelle Wong and I, Dr. Michelle Wong at Glam and Beauty Science, and I, so Beauty SciComm is our collective SciComm project, and through that we made an acronym to help people think about it. So I Google this. It's not that pretty of a name, but we called it mud caps to protect your brain from all the mud that's just everywhere. So it's an acronym to just like sort through credible experts online. A big thing with this information environment is like nobody is going to be able to look into the research on every single topic, especially because of the inaccessibility of the different topics when it comes to the science. Like you have to critically appraise the science, because there's like right now, like bad science is a really, really big problem. There's a lot of predatory journals cropping up. Research fraud is a huge issue. And so you have to critically appraise what you're looking for or looking at when it comes to science, but you're not going to have the time or expertise to do that for every single topic. So there's a study in 1992 from Nature that was already talking about the increasing complexity of science and the increasing need to be a specialist in that specific science at a very high level to actually understand it. You have to be able to critically appraise the science, but in order to do that, you have to understand the specific methodologies of the science. You have to understand the technical jargon. You have to understand the body of literature that science belongs to. And so like you're not going to be able to do that for every single topic. So what you have to do is you have to find experts to trust, information sources to trust, but then how do you know who to trust? This is a really huge and important topic, especially because like, oh my gosh. So step one for finding truth is like finding the right people and understanding the consensus amongst the right people. But a huge barrier right now is people do not understand who the relevant subject matter experts are. And there's no shortage of people, especially online, where a lot of people are getting their information from lately, who will obscure their expertise for obvious gains to build a platform as an expert. That's trending. Right now, it's Like
Yep.
there are lucrative opportunities, especially if you're a charlatan, to build a platform as an expert. And you're just like, this needs to be researched, this topic, because it's something that I'm currently seeing unfold on social media.
Everywhere.
But
Yeah.
yeah, you need to understand first. To understand these topics, you need to first understand who the relevant subject matter experts are for the topics. And you need to dig in a little bit, because people will tell you that they have specific expertise. Like, look, and if
You
they
need to
are
verify
not
that.
being transparent about their expertise, then that should at least be a red flag. Not everyone's on LinkedIn, but many people are. If they're not, I mean, this is an unkind thing, because a lot of people just like don't want to be on LinkedIn, but like some people actively aren't because they are trying to like
Hide. Yeah.
hide a little bit that they don't actually have that much expertise. So just like look into this. If somebody's saying that they're a cosmetic chemist, they don't have a single degree in science, and they've built up a massive platform as a PhD cosmetic scientist, and they don't have a single degree in science, literally somebody is doing that right now. Like,
Oh my
dig
gosh.
into that and
Yeah.
understand that they may not represent the consensus of relevant experts because they have obfuscated that from you. So yeah, learn about relevant
Yeah.
experts and then dig in a little bit. Do your homework about the specific
Verify it for
people.
yourself.
There's
Yeah.
also a really great so the Mudcaps was specific to finding credible information sources. That's from Michelle and I. And then Dr. Jess Stokes Parrish also made a really great framework called the Crabs framework. So it's just something to look at when you're trying to find good information sources. Some things that are kind of common amongst both of our platforms is like scope of expertise is important, but it's not crucially important for your information sources, as long as they're transparent and as long as they're willing to correct themselves, and as long as they have a little bit of like an epistemic humility. Like they're not like, they don't have this like god complex that they understand everything, which some people are like. So if somebody is like that, then that should be a red flag. It's okay for people to talk outside of their expertise, but they will be more likely to get things wrong. And so when they do talk outside of the expertise, they should be cautious, they should be transparent. And so look for those types of things from your information sources. Look for things like appeal to authority. Are they telling you that the reason why they are correct on some of these topics is because they're the expert? That is a red flag,
That's not
because
enough.
they
Yeah.
probably don't have, then if they're saying I'm right because I'm the expert, I'm right because I'm a PhD cosmetic scientist, I'm right because whatever I'm a board
Yeah.
certified dermatologist, are you going to tell me that I'm wrong? And so many times when I see that they're talking, the dermatologists online are talking about like something like cosmetic chemistry, it's like, that's not relevant to
That's
that.
not
And
your
if people just
lane. Yeah.
knew that was, so first step, understand what the relevant expertise is before you get into starting this like venture into the information sources credibility. So they might not
No, it's a
actually have a legitimate like understanding, a legitimate like argument behind what they're publishing, if that is why they're correct. Look for buzzwords. If somebody is using buzzwords in their content, whatever it looks like this is toxic without any kind of nuance. Like everything can be toxic. It's all a matter of the exposure. And many things that are toxic are not at lower exposures, and often there can be a benefit at different exposures, like water, low exposure. I mean, if you have too low of exposure, actually, you'll die of dehydration. So you need some exposure. But too much of that exposure, like there's a
But labeling anything
it's a buzzword.
without having
That's a
that
red flag.
context, without having that, yeah. I don't know. It's just so crazy how often it's happening. And as you're describing it, I'm like, wow, there really is. I can think of like 5 people that I currently engage with online, and I'm like, now that you mention it, I have to go verify my sources here.
And like, it's
Yeah.
fine to follow these people, whatever. But if you're trying to find truth, so the first
Yeah.
thing you should do when you're trying to find truth, whatever the space is, and this is just a topic, this is a concept that I'm continuously confronted with in my research, is that people don't really understand relevant expertise. People don't really understand relevant expertise for environmental performance, and that's why the wrong people keep getting a platform to talk about things that they're not really the right experts for, but people don't really know. So, step one, understand who the relevant experts are so that you can try to find the consensus amongst the relevant experts. And then step two, start to vet those individuals. Even if they're a relevant expert, it does not mean that they're going to be a credible information source. Even if it's an association that is purportedly relevant, like still do this like vetting of their information quality that they're presenting. And if you do this, then you will probably have an easier time finding truth. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult to find truth. And so if you want to do like productive things in terms of producing products that are less impactful, as one example, like find the right people first.
Thank you for going in. I really appreciate the explanation, because I don't think that's something I understood when we first spoke, what your misinformation and the environmental impact is. So elaborating on it was really helpful to hear, and I'm sure that our listeners will appreciate that as well. So much disinformation being released that it's hard for consumers and people to distinguish between the two.
It's not worth trying, in my opinion. Intent is hard to grapple with. And this is something that I've seen more and more people who research misinformation coming to the conclusion. Like, I don't really think it's worthwhile trying to distinguish disinformation and misinformation, because misinformation, the umbrella that disinformation would fall under, is net bad, overwhelmingly.
All of it.
It
Okay.
doesn't really matter the intent. So there was this example that was given in this study about misplaced conservation, and so there was a group of environmental enthusiasts who were trying to save the monarch butterflies in their region. And so with the best of intentions, they planted a certain milkweed. But they had the wrong information, because that milkweed was not the right milkweed for the monarch butterflies. And they ended up making the actual issue of the population decline of monarch butterflies, they actually made it worse. And that's the outcome. So, good intentions, this was a conclusion, or this was a statement that really it resonated with me in this study, from Adam Ford. I've actually hosted him on my podcast based out of, I think, the University of Alberta. Good intentions do not excuse easily foreseen and managed harm. Outcomes are the arbitrators, in this case, of conservation success, or the success of anything that we're talking about. So if these people just took longer to find the right information, they could have had a better outcome, but they didn't. And so it doesn't matter. And you see this a lot for other topics, like, and this is something that I'm really interested in my research. A lot of people with the best intentions are avoiding, for example, palm, and making really loud statements of palm oil being like destructive to the environment, like blanket statement, but
For
without
years, yeah.
recognizing the fact that it is actually the most resource efficient oil seed available, especially in the context of the building blocks that we rely on in the cosmetics industry. Surfactants, it's not just the cosmetics industry. Surfactants literally run the world. They are some of the most arguably important chemicals we have in society. If we didn't have a quote from Neil Burns, who runs he's a science communicator specific to surfactants, really into the weeds. I enjoy his content, but it's like literally planes would be falling out of the sky if we didn't have surfactants. They are that important. They're important for our infrastructure, for like cement and whatever, but they do rely on these building blocks. So we used to make them with petroleum sources, and because of the issues with that, we started to shift plant-based sources. But you need a certain chemistry to make these products. And so the options that we have overwhelmingly in most cases are, especially when we're talking about viability, coconut or palm. So the trend from the palm oil stuff was like, let's shift to coconut because coconut is perceived to be better. It was perceived because there was a limited research on it at the time, but it makes sense that probably it would have a higher impact because it's more resource intensive and it's also grown in like richly biodiverse regions. So it probably has the same kind of issues that we're experiencing in palm. The market response has been to shift to coconut. Now we're starting to see that coconut actually has a larger impact for biodiversity loss. This perception though is really stuck, and you can now see there's some regulations out of the EU that are focused on palm related to deforestation that aren't addressing coconuts but are really focused on palm. So it's having like massively huge impacts based off of good intentions. People want to remove palm because like there is issues with that supply chain, but probably the right thing to do isn't just to like stop investing in it. We actually need to invest more to solve those issues. Like we need a diversity of supply sources, but yeah, that misinformation and those outcomes were probably in most cases, especially when we're talking about consumers trying to vote with their wallet to buy greener products, which is also kind of a concerning statement because consumerism is a problem, but net harm despite good intentions.
It's crazy to think that they're so quick to make shifts based on so little information and just verified from each other, as opposed to really probing into it, considering we have so many technical specialists and regulatory folks involved.
It's just really hard to measure some
It
things,
is hard,
firstly, but also like when you look at corporate environmental reporting is just one example. Like very few corporations who are environmentally reporting, very few companies are actually measuring the things that they're reporting on via things like life cycle assessments. There's problems with life cycle assessments too, but you have to measure it. It's a really difficult topic, and so like in fairness, like it's a really difficult, complex topic that we all need to kind of work together and think through it.
Yeah.
Companies are also using different key performance indicators. So like we're all talking different things that make the environmental reports like really, really difficult to compare. So all this is to say it's complicated. There's pressure externally for companies to report, but there's not good systems in place for them to report in a way that would be actually helpful. This is a really big topic, huge topic, but a big thing is a lot of the environmental statements and even reports from big corporations are driven by assumptions. So this is just like systemic, and that is a problem because we need to come from a place of understanding if we're going to drive progress, and we need to collectively do that. Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry.
You're doing amazing work. No, it's okay. You're doing amazing work. I can't wait
feel like
to
I'm kind of like
hear what
preachy
you
right
can.
now. I'm sorry.
No, the reality is it has to be preachy because we're in a position where like a lot of people aren't aware of the biases that are happening and they probably don't know. It should be something that we speak about often, especially in the science space. It's our responsibility to know better. It's our responsibility to probe into these topics and be providing the right information to consumers. It's just part of our job. If there's something that doesn't seem to be completely right to you, go ahead and look into it. Get into the weeds of it. That's our job, is to be naturally inquisitive. It's it's what we're supposed to do.
I'm actually going to be giving a presentation on some of what I've just been talking about at Suppliers Day next week.
Yeah.
A big take home is that I have for people who are in the audience with respect to this topic is to start demanding accountability from whoever, especially if you're a technical person. That doesn't happen enough. You see some of the, in my opinion, as like a pedantic dweeb, outrageous statements from the ingredients suppliers. Maybe it's not as outrageous to you and you just don't care as much as I do. I just do.
Well, you
I
can
really
spot
care.
it better.
I think I'm way too, like, I kind of get emotional about it. It's like I'm very bothered about like the injustice of it. But like, if somebody's telling you that their product is more environmentally friendly, just as this one example, and you can plug and play this concept for anything really, even if it's like a health related topic or cosmetics performance related topic, whatever it is. If somebody's telling you that they're better because of some buzzword, we're upcycled, we're solids, we're biotech, we have seaweed, we have sulfate free surfactants, we have, I mean, the buzzwords are endless on the topic of environmental claims in cosmetics. Like, ask, is that the only reason why you feel that you're more environmentally friendly? Being local also not good enough. I've seen this. Like, these are just the claims that I see from ingredient suppliers all the time, and then they're teaching the brands. Ask them if they've actually measured these things, or are they just talking out of their ass with buzzwords? It's just like, that is a rampant thing. And if we can start to demand more accountability, and that starts with just like having conversations with the people who are making these claims, then by demanding more accountability, we can start to do better. So start to have these conversations and ask the questions, ask the important questions, which is ask for evidence. When people are making a claim, ask for the evidence to support it. Whatever the topic
Whatever
is.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked this question of all of my guests. What advice would you give your younger self, given what you know now?
I feel like my younger self did a lot of things that just worked out right. Like, I invested in myself with entrepreneurship. So that wouldn't be a suggestion that I would give to myself personally.
What would you say, like,
To myself,
hey, it's okay to run with it because it worked?
yeah, well, I mean, I would have anyways. That's just my personality. I kind of go off the traditional course, just like generally, and I feel emboldened when people tell me that I can't do something or it's gonna fail. Then I just want to prove them wrong. Like, my mom told me, don't start a business. It's not very sustainable for careers. You should work for the government. My mom really wanted me to work for the government. And so I'm
My
like, you know
parents
what?
too, till this day.
I'm gonna show you.
Yeah.
So this advice will be relevant to anyone who wants to do science communication on a public platform. Like, you need to get thick skin, but also, like, because people honestly, they kind of suck online. And as a science communicator, especially as a woman, especially somebody who does corrections of content, you are going to be abused on social media. That is just a reality, because people suck and people get like emotional when they're corrected. So, like, have a support network firstly outside of your platform. That's very, very important, so you can disconnect. And like, hobbies also really help. Like, it's really helpful that I have rock climbing. But like, yeah, try not to take things people online are saying like seriously. Like, believe in yourself. And if you have, like, for me, I just like, I'm really attached to integrity and things that I can stand behind as like my guiding light. Stand behind it. And when people suck, then just move on. It's fine. It's fine, because that's just reality. But believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. And like, and you know what? This is going to be actually relevant to anyone, whoever you are, even if you're not doing science communication. You might work at a corporation where there's some like bully higher up. I mean, maybe switch jobs, but this is something you might see broadly in the industry. Maybe there's some like bully. Actually, like, earlier in my career, I was bullied by this really hurt me, a senior cosmetic chemist. And it really bothered me for a long time. But had I had this perspective then, it would have helped me with the hardship that I experienced when this all was happening. It's like, people can suck, and that's fine. And like oftentimes they're sucking because they have something going on in their life, or maybe they haven't developed the right thinking skills to see the world as you see it. And maybe this is a biased perception of how I see the world, but like, yeah, believe in yourself. Believe in yourself and let people suck, and know that sometimes there's a reason for them to be behaving that way. Maybe they have something going on in your life, and keep moving forward one foot at a time, and ultimately things, I mean, I don't want to say things will always work out, but
They tend
with
to.
time things
Some
tend
things do.
to sort themselves out.
Yeah. I think that brings us full circle to something you said earlier that has been buzzing in my head is you mean a lot to yourself. It's okay to prioritize your own feelings over what you're doing and anybody else's opinion. So thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure someone needed to hear it. I mean, we all have had some bullies at work. I think we've all had some pretty decent bullies at work, but it is interesting to go into that space as an adult and still feel so small, but not letting it get to you and realizing that you're more important to yourself. And again, having other things to look forward to outside of those spaces. I appreciate your time. I thank you for like sharing everything you did with me. I hope our listeners are going to love it. I'm sure there'll be questions. So folks can submit their questions and I'll send them over to you. Where can folks find you?
On most platforms, you can find me at the EcoWell, with the exception on LinkedIn. I don't use that account. I mostly am on LinkedIn via my personal LinkedIn, which is Jen Novakovich. You can also find me on my website, theecowell.com, and that's where I publish all the replays of my conferences. Those are also on my YouTube, but also all my everything that I publish, I try to put it there, with the exception of my like reels that I post on social media. And then you can also find me on all places you can stream podcasts, in addition to my website. But if you search the EcoWell podcast.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm proud to announce that you can find the Glam Chemist podcast on any platform that shares podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Lemonade. Be sure to follow our content so that you know who our new guests might be every week. Also use that platform to ask any questions or suggest anyone that you would like to participate in the podcast. This entire platform is for you. We will work together to build this community, and my goal is to share all the information you might need. So feel free to ask. I'll do my best to speak to those folks so that we can all share in the conversation. New episodes will be released every Wednesday. You'll hear some familiar voices and find some new ones. The Glam Chemist podcast is a Hija de Lolita's production. The episode's jingle was created by Producer AI. Recording and editing is done by your host, Genesis Velasquez.